Tucked along a quiet bend of the Suwannee River, just a short hike west of the canoe outpost, there's a piece of living history, a curious bent tree, not shaped by storm or accident, but by the hands of Native Americans generations ago. This is what's known as an Indian trail tree, a natural compass, gently bent when it was just a sapling, then anchored in place and left to grow, pointing the way to water, shelter, or sacred ground. Suwannee is, of course, world famous for its music festivals, but beyond the stages and lights are miles of winding trails full of quiet beauty and hidden stories. This tree, like the river beside it, has stood the test of time. It reminds us that long before the songs, before the crowds, this land held its own rhythm, walked by those who knew it deeply. So, if you ever find yourself at the Spirit of the Suwannee Music Park, take a little detour. Wander west from the canoe outpost, let the river guide you, and you just might stumble upon a piece of history still pointing the way. Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. I'm Satoli. I'm in Florida today with Ken Sulak, and we're going to talk about this massive tree behind us. How you doing, Ken?
I'm doing fine. Beautiful day.
So tell me about this thing. Yeah, I mean, you don't see trees this big very often.
No, this is a grand old Virginia live oak, and you can tell it's a live oak because of all the gnarly twisting limbs, and also this time of year all the other trees have lost their leaves, and it still has its leaves because it's evergreen.
Okay.
But this tree is 6 feet in diameter at chest high, which means that it is approximately 350 years old if you use the forestry formulas. So it's in that neighborhood, 300 to 400 years old. And it has a very curious, unusual shape. It's not the usual shape of most live oak trees, which tend to twist and turn, but they don't get right angles and they don't get strange things. This tree has been shaped by humans when it was a sapling, and specifically chosen the two species of oaks down here, the swamp chestnut oak and the live oak, that were used by Indians to make what we call trail marker trees. And this is a trail marker tree. And so when it was a sapling, it was bent over, the trunk was bent over and cut off, and that trunk is now, the old trunk is buried in the riverbank here because of the floods that we've had. But that is called the pointer nose of the tree. And then side branches of the tree were left to grow upright to replace the original trunk. And so you have a tree that has a pointer nose pointing in a certain direction, and then 1, 2, or 3 uprights. And I've deduced from what those uprights mean. Those uprights, each one of those stands for 1 day's walk, 20 miles, and that's the average of a young, healthy person can walk through the forest in 1 day. And so if you have 3 uprights like you have here, that means 60 miles. And this pointer nose is pointing due south. And if you go due south from here, 60 miles, you come to the Indian trading post of Talashte, which the white people called Old Clay Landing on the Suwannee River, which was the second most important Indian trading post in Florida back in the 15, 16, and 1700s. The Indians used dugout canoes from there, and they went down the Suwannee and they out into the Gulf and went over to St. Mark's, which was the most important trading post in Florida. And they also paddled across to Cuba
Did they?
in great dugout canoes. So they felled a great big old cypress tree, which could be 4 or 5 feet in diameter, hollowed it out, and they'd have as many as 30 Indians paddling these canoes and go across the Gulf to Cuba. And they traded tobacco and gold and beef and all sorts of things back and forth between Cuba and Talashte on the Suwannee River. So this tree is pointing the way for you to walk to get to Talashte once you've crossed the Suwannee River. The other thing that these trail markers mark is they mark important fords or crossing points at rivers. So here we are where there was an Indian trail that came down from the approximate position of Statenville, Georgia, southern Georgia, due south to Suwannee Spring. And Suwannee Spring was an important Indian site for gatherings, for ceremonies and the like, which is only about a mile away from here. And this was a crossing point, and this is also the reason why the railroad came here, because the Indian Trail came right to where this trail tree is, and the settlers didn't have any other roads. They followed the Indian trails, and eventually they widened and straightened them and made those into wagon trails. And it was convenient when they wanted to build the railroad in 1861 to use that wagon trail so that they could get the supplies along to build the railroad. And that's why that railroad is sited here. And that's why Route 129 is here. It follows essentially follows the old Indian Trail going north out of Florida.
Huh.
It's an interesting history. As a matter of fact, most of our roads in North Florida were originally Indian trails. So Route 90 going east and west from here to from Live Oak to Lake City, and from Live Oak going west towards Tallahassee is also the old Indian Trail, an old Indian Trail back from the 1500s.
And most people don't even know that or even think about it.
And the interstate parallels that. So basically our pattern of travel was really established in the 1500s and hasn't really changed much since then. So anyway, this tree is significant as a crossing point for the river. It's significant in that it points to the next most important place that you wanted to get to if you're an Indian traveling south through Florida. And so far I've found 14 such trees in North Florida.
Have you?
And they all work out to be pointing into one of two or three really important places that they were trying to get to.
Cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
That's amazing.
And I found two lookalikes. The Indians were smart. They used trees that they knew were going to grow and live for 200 or 300 years, like this tree. Some people have made trail marker trees. In the 1940s, there was a flurry of interest in them, and people were making them with saplings. Well, oaks are hard to bend, and so I found two that are sweet gums. So sweet gums are soft and easy to bend, but they bent over, but had the right angle and had an upright, but they weren't pointing into any particular direction, and so I think those were look-alike trees.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about regarding the tree?
Nothing I can think of right off, but I'm trying to get people, raise the awareness of this so I can get more eyes out there and find more of these, because I'm sure there's a network of them. There's one that someone informed me of in Central Florida that as the oak tree grew, it had two trunks, and they took one of the limbs and grafted it across. So it high up in the tree, it makes a window between, and that's, although live oaks limbs will twist and turn in all kinds of directions, they never grow into each other. And so that had to be done by human intervention, and I call that the window oak. And it's really prominent, from a great distance away, you can see that tree right away. One other thing about these oaks. Back in the, before white people came here, before the Spanish and before the Americans in the 1800s came to Florida, Florida was 27 million acres of longleaf pine, 5-6 feet in diameter, 150 feet tall, and very much like a redwood forest. And then you had the giant bald cypress along the low swampy areas. But along the riverbanks you had these live oaks. And so the whole forest here back then would have been, here in this high ground, would have been longleaf pine. And an oak along the riverbank amidst nothing but longleaf pine would really stand out, especially if it's bent, because all the pine trees are absolutely straight.
Right.
Yeah. And you didn't have all this undergrowth. That forest was just like a redwood forest with an open understory. We didn't have all these vines and stuff on the ground.
All right, well, thanks. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you.